Arrest him. Put him in a cage.
Through the forest canopy parted without warning, and there it was, a scar carved into the April light. Barbed wire stretched to both horizons. Watchtowers stood like iron fingers pointing at nothing. And behind the wire, shapes. Shapes that had forgotten how to be human. A man waited at the gate. His uniform was flawless. SS insignia gleamed. Boots reflected the sky like black mirrors. His chest was full, his cheeks flushed, his stomach fed. He carried a riding crop, not as a weapon, but as an accessory, the way a banker carries a briefcase. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He walked toward the lead British tank, raised one gloved hand, and spoke with the calm of a man requesting a table at a restaurant. "I am the commandant. I demand a truce. The prisoners are sick. You must not release them." The British soldiers stared at him. Then they stared past him. Past the gate. Past the wire. At the bodies stacked against the fence like cordwood. At the thousands of skeletons wearing skin, standing perfectly still because movement cost calories they didn't have. At the ground itself, black, wet, stained with something that wasn't rain. Brigadier General Glenn Hughes sat in his armored vehicle and studied this well-fed man with the polished boots. His hand drifted to his side arm. He didn't draw. Instead, he issued an order that would follow Josef Kramer into every history book ever written. Arrest him. Put him in a cage. Let him feel what it's like. What happened next would test the limits of justice itself. Before we go deeper, if history's darkest corners matter to you, if you believe that forgetting is the real crime, take 5 seconds. Hit like. Share this with someone who needs to remember. And so now let's walk through that gate. Bergen-Belsen was not Auschwitz. No gas chambers. No industrial crematoria. The Nazis hadn't designed it as a factory of death. They had designed something arguably worse, a slow erasure. They took 60,000 human beings, Jews, political enemies, resistance fighters, Roma, and simply stopped treating them as alive. No food deliveries. No medicine. No clean water. They packed them into barracks built for 5,000 and watched the human body collapse under mathematics. Typhus arrived like a tidal wave. Dysentery followed. Then starvation. Then the quiet, terrible surrender of every system that keeps a person breathing. When British boots hit the ground inside those gates on April 15, 1945, they found 13,000 corpses lying exactly where death had caught them, against fences, in doorways, sometimes still sitting up because rigor had set in before they could fall over. Inside the barracks, the living slept pressed against the dead. There was no room to separate. There was no energy to care. The thing that broke the soldiers most was the silence. 60,000 people. Almost no sound. Because sound requires breath. And breath required food they hadn't seen in months. The silence of the dying is louder than any scream. Lieutenant Colonel Leonard Burney, among the first inside, wrote, "The woman sat on a pile of corpses eating something raw. She didn't look up. She didn't know I was there. She was beyond knowing anything." Grown men, combat veterans who had stormed beaches and survived mortar barrages, sat down in the mud and wept like children. What would you have done if you had been standing there? And at the center of it all, calm as a clerk filing paperwork, stood Josef Kramer. He informed the British officers that he had done his best. Berlin had stopped sending supplies. The overcrowding was not his fault. He had filed complaints through proper channels. He shrugged. That shrug. That small, casual lift of the shoulders. That was the moment the liberators became something else entirely. Josef Kramer did not stumble into evil. He marched into it with both eyes open, one step at a time, for 15 years. He joined the SS in 1932, while Hitler was still clawing his way toward the Chancellery. He learned his trade at Dachau. He refined it at Mauthausen. He perfected it at Auschwitz-Birkenau, where he served as commandant of the most efficient killing machine the human species has ever assembled. Survivors of Auschwitz described him as a man who killed without anger, without pleasure, and without hesitation, which made him more terrifying than the ones who enjoyed it. He kicked prisoners to death for walking too slowly. Not in rage. Casually. The way you might kick a rock off a path. He personally selected children for the gas chambers. He stood on the arrival platform, watched the trains disgorge their human cargo, and pointed left or right. Life or death. He did this while eating his lunch. He wrote letters to his wife from Auschwitz saying he loved his work. That the camp was beautiful in summer. That he wished she could see it. By 1944, they transferred him to Belsen with a simple instruction: manage the overflow. No gas chambers this time. Just neglect weaponized. They called him the Beast of Belsen. But he didn't look like a beast. He looked like a man you might see buying bread. Ordinary face. Composed manner. But survivors who looked into his eyes said the same thing again and again. There was nothing behind them. No hate. No love. No anything. What does it mean when evil wears a completely normal face? The British acted immediately. Brigadier Hughes ordered Kramer disarmed. A British sergeant stepped forward. Kramer drew himself up to his full height and fixed the sergeant with a stare he had spent 15 years perfecting. "Do you know who I am?" The sergeant didn't answer. The rifle stock connected with Kramer's stomach. The beast doubled over. The riding crop clattered to the ground. 15 years of absolute authority shattered in half a second. British hands stripped his weapons, tore the medals from his chest, medals the German government had awarded him for efficiency in murder, and twisted his arms behind his back. "I am a commandant," Kramer gasped. "You cannot treat me this way." The British officer looked at him for a long, level moment. "You are a murderer. You will be treated like one." They didn't put him in a cell with a bed and blankets. They found an ice house, an underground root cellar, dark, damp, freezing. They threw him inside. They slammed the door. For the first time in his adult life, Josef Kramer was in a cage. But he wasn't alone. Running the women's section of Belsen was a 21-year-old woman named Irma Grese. Blonde. Striking. The newspapers would call her the beautiful beast, perhaps the most chilling oxymoron ever printed. She carried a whip made of cellophane, braided and stiff, designed to slash human flesh. She used it on faces. She owned 2 large dogs trained to attack human beings on command. Survivors testified that she would sometimes simply point at a woman and walk away while the dogs did the rest. When British soldiers arrested her, she put her hands on her hips and glared at them. She was 21 years old. She had spent years wielding absolute power over thousands of women. She had not yet understood that her era had ended. She learned quickly. They threw her into the cell next to Kramer's. She screamed. She cursed in German. She sang Nazi songs to keep herself awake and defiant. She didn't sleep for 2 days. They gave her the same rations as the prisoners. Watery soup. Stale bread. The master race was eating concentration camp food. The British commanders now faced a practical nightmare. The camp was a biological bomb. 13,000 decomposing bodies in April warmth. Disease spreading outward. Survivors dying even as they were being rescued. The cleanup required more hands than the British Army could spare. The commander looked at the SS guards, dozens of them, still in uniform, still standing in formation, still carrying themselves with the posture of masters. He made a decision that appears in no military manual. The SS built this. The SS will clean it up. He ordered every SS guard to report for labor duty. Not guard duty. Labor. Carrying the dead. British soldiers formed a line with bayonets fixed. They marched the SS guards into the camp. The prisoners watched. Some wept. Some cheered, thin, ragged cheers from lungs that had almost forgotten how to make sound. But they cheered because the men and women who had pointed and laughed and beaten them were now being marched at gunpoint into the hell they had created. The SS received no gloves, no masks, no protection. Pick them up. The guards who had never touched prisoners, who had kept their distance, who had used dogs and batons to stay clean, were now ordered to lift decomposing corpses with their bare hands and carry them to mass graves. Some refused. The British soldiers showed them the alternative. No one refused twice. Josef Kramer was unchained from his cell and dragged into daylight. They shackled him to the back of a British jeep. Then they drove him slowly, deliberately, through every section of the camp he had commanded. The survivors saw him. They spat. They threw stones. They screamed in a dozen languages. The man who had walked through this camp like a god, who had pointed left and right, who had never once been touched, was now being dragged through it like cargo. Shackled. Humiliated. Stared at by the people he had tried to erase. For many survivors, they said later, this was the first moment that felt like reality again. The first moment they could believe the world still contained justice. But the camp had one more punishment to deliver. The bodies were saturated with typhus. The lice that spread it were everywhere, in the soil, in the barracks, in the clothing of the dead. By forcing the SS guards to carry corpses with bare hands for days, the British had exposed them to a concentration of infection that was almost unsurvivable without medical intervention. British doctors treated the survivors. They gave what medicine they had. They worked around the clock. They did not treat the SS. Within days, the guards began to fall sick. High fevers. Delirium. Organs shutting down. The same death that had killed thousands of innocent people at Belsen now moved through the ranks of their tormentors. More than 20 SS guards died of typhus in the weeks after liberation. They died of exactly what they had inflicted. The biology of the camp turned against the people who had built it. Some call it irony. The soldiers who were there called it something else. Justice doesn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it wears a fever. September 1945. Lüneburg, Germany. The courtroom was packed. Josef Kramer sat in the dock wearing a paper number on his chest. Number 1. The man who had worn an SS commandant's uniform, who had been saluted by hundreds of guards every day, now wore a paper tag and sat where he was told to sit. Irma Grese sat beside him. Number 9. Kramer's defense was the same defense every Nazi officer used. He had followed orders. He was a soldier. He owed a duty to the fatherland. He had not personally killed anyone. The system had killed them. He was merely part of the system. British prosecutor Colonel Backhouse methodically destroyed him. He showed the footage. The footage British cameraman had captured the day the tanks rolled in. Footage already playing in cinemas across Britain and America. Footage making audiences walk out unable to speak. He showed the photographs. He brought witness after witness, men and women who had survived, who stood in the box and pointed at Kramer and said, "I saw him. I saw what he did. I saw him beat a man to death with a stick. I saw him shoot a child because the child cried." Kramer sat through all of it with the same expression. Stone cold. Almost bored. No flicker of remorse. No movement in the eyes. He was the same man at Lüneburg that he had been at Belsen and Auschwitz. Completely, perfectly empty. Grese tried a different approach. She smiled at the judges. She fixed her hair. She leaned forward. She used the thing that had always worked for her before, the thing she believed was her ultimate weapon. Her beauty. Then the witnesses described her dogs. Her whip. The game she played where she walked through the women's barracks and pointed at random, and the women she pointed at disappeared. The women on the stand couldn't look at her while they testified. They looked at the floor. At their hands. At the ceiling. Anywhere but at the face they had seen in their nightmares for years. The judges looked at Irma Grese with something beyond disgust. November 17, 1945. Guilty. Kramer showed nothing. Grese laughed, high and sharp and broken. Not the laugh of someone finding something funny. The laugh of someone whose mind had finally reached the edge of the cliff. The sentence was death. December 13, 1945. Hamelin Prison. The British sent Albert Pierre Point. He was the most celebrated executioner in British history. Calm. Precise. Professional. He didn't hate the Nazis. He didn't feel the rage the soldiers had felt. He was simply the last instrument of a justice that had taken years and millions of lives to arrive at this room. This rope. This moment. He measured the drop carefully. He checked the knot. He prepared the chamber. Kramer walked in first. He looked at Pierre Point. He looked at the rope. He didn't speak. No final statement. No salute to his ideology. No appeal to God or history or the fatherland. Just silence. Pierre Point placed the white hood over his head. He fitted the noose around his neck. He checked the position. Adjusted slightly. Stepped back. The trapdoor opened. The beast of Belsen fell. His neck snapped cleanly. He was dead before his heart beat again. Josef Kramer. Commandant of Auschwitz. Commandant of Bergen-Belsen. Killer of an uncountable number of human beings. Decorated officer of the SS gone. Irma Grese walked in minutes later. She was 22 years old, the youngest woman executed under British law in the 20th century. She walked without being dragged. She stood without being held. She looked at the British guards with her clear blue eyes. She smiled one last time. She said, "Schnell." Quickly. Pierre Point obliged. The beautiful beast fell. And then there was silence in the chamber. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. The kind that feels full. The British Army had one final act to perform at Bergen-Belsen. The survivors were transferred carefully, slowly, in ambulances and trucks to field hospitals in the surrounding area. British nurses and doctors worked shifts that lasted as long as their bodies could stand. Some survivors were so damaged that they died even after liberation. Even with full medical care. Even after the nightmare was technically over. They had simply been broken too completely to be put back together. When the last survivor was out, the British brought in the flamethrowers. They burned every barracks to the ground. Every wooden hut. every guard tower, every fence post, everything that had held typhus and death inside its walls. They turned it to ash. They brought in bulldozers and scraped the earth flat where the buildings had stood. They wanted to erase the infection from the world. When it was done, they erected a sign. Plain wood. Simple lettering. This is the site of the infamous Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, liberated by the British on the 15th of April, 1945. 10,000 unburied dead were found here. Another 13,000 have since died. All of them were victims of the German New Order in Europe and an example of Nazi culture. May they rest in peace. No celebration. No triumphalism. Just a record. This happened here. These people were here. Remember, Josef Kramer spent his entire career believing in a hierarchy. The strong over the weak. The master over the slave. The man in the uniform over the man in the barracks. He built his identity on the idea that rank was permanent, that power was absolute, that the people behind the wire were not really people at all. And then one April morning, a British sergeant smashed a rifle stock into his stomach, and the entire architecture collapsed. He died at the end of a rope erected by a country he had dismissed as soft. He died as a criminal, not a soldier. He died without a single person weeping for him. The survivors of Bergen-Belsen, the ones who made it, the ones who lived long enough to rebuild lives in Israel, in America, in Britain, in Australia, they carried Belsen inside them for the rest of their lives. That is a cost that no execution, no trial, no act of justice can ever truly balance. But the British soldiers who were there, who smelled the smell, who saw the bodies, who looked into the eyes of the walking dead, they made sure that the man responsible died knowing that the world knew exactly who he was and exactly what he had done. Some say the soldiers went too far. That the beatings, the forced labor, the typhus exposure, these things were beneath the dignity of a professional army. But the men who were there say something different. They say you cannot understand the decision unless you smelled the smell. Josef Kramer thought he was untouchable. He thought his rank would protect him. His uniform would save him. His ideology would outlast him. He was wrong on every count. If you made it this far, you believe that history matters, that the darkest chapters deserve to be told so the world never forgets. That's exactly what war real history is built for. So take a second. Hit like. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. We don't look away from the hard truths. Do you think the British soldiers were justified in everything they did at Belsen? Or did some of it cross an invisible line? Drop your honest answer in the comments. There's no wrong answer here. Just truth.